Welcome back to the Haunted Beard, everybody. My name is Jake. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to talk about what I think is one of the most underrated horror TV shows, and that is Channel Zero. Channel Zero ran for 4 seasons, and it's an anthology series based on well-known internet creepypastas. They took those stories and made a season out of it. And I want to give you my official ranking for all 4 seasons. And I will say, though, before I get to the official ranking, all 4 seasons are good and worth your time and definitely worth watching. So if you haven't seen this show, do yourself a favor, go check it out. It is well worth your time. But let's get to it. So coming in at number 4 is going to be Season 3, Butcher's Block. And this tells the story of a young woman named Alice who moves to a new city. She learns about a series of disappearances that may be connected to a baffling rumor about a mysterious staircase in the city's worst neighborhood. So we're introduced to Zoe and Alice here, who are sisters, and they are moving into this house in this new town, and it is this like socioeconomic dead zone. It's this pretty rundown town, and it all involves this guy by the name of Joseph Peach, who ran this meat plant company called Peach's Meats, and he disappeared many years ago, and that left the town just in complete shambles and total ruin. And this sets up the main mystery here involving the 2 sisters and the disappearances that are occurring in the town and these mysterious staircases in the middle of the woods. What exactly is going on and how does it all fit together? And as I said, even though this is my number 4, I still think Butcher's Block is a pretty solid season overall. This one uses some supernatural elements, has some pretty effective gory sequences and disturbing moments. There's also some elements of like conspiracies and cover-up and things like that. And speaking of disturbing moments, there is this like brain surgery scene that happens in this season that is just really memorable and well done. And it's just twisted and weird and disturbing, but very memorable and one of the highlight scenes. The thing about Channel Zero is all 4 seasons contain some sort of like emotional or psychological element to them. And this season specifically is really a lot about like mental health and trauma and things like that, as Alice and Zoe's mother had this like complete psychotic break, and now Zoe is starting to show some signs as well, and so Alice is having to sort of be like her parent and really watch out and look out for her. And so like with all 4 seasons, it has some stuff going on beneath the surface. It has some pretty effective and powerful themes to it. And in this case, in addition to it being about like mental health and trauma, and there's also some stuff about like self-harm and PTSD and things like that. And a large part of the story is ultimately about how difficult and challenging it can be to go through some of those things as we see them manifesting in our 2 main characters. And it's just about their struggle and battle in going through some of those things. The way that Butcher's Block weaves these themes into the story involving the girls and the story involving the Peach family and the mysterious stairs in the woods makes for a pretty compelling watch. It has some really nice mystery to it. It has some really solid atmosphere to it. Like I said, there's definitely some disturbing and messed up moments. Even though it's number 4, it's still definitely worth watching. I just happened to like the other 3 a little bit more and found them to be a little bit more effective in how they executed the story. Coming in at number 3 is Season 1, Candle Cove. And this is about the return of a kids' TV show from the 1980s that coincides with the disappearances of a young child. So right off the bat, we're introduced to our main character, Mike, who is a child psychologist. And we find out that he had this twin brother who disappeared when they were 11 years old in this event called the Iron Hill Murders, which took place right in his hometown. His brother disappeared along with 5 other kids, and it coincided with this very mysterious and creepy kids TV show called Candle Cove. And Candle Cove has this element of lost or like cursed media to it, which is I guess you could kind of call it a trope that we see occasionally in horror films, but it's one that I really enjoy and really get down with. And there's just something about this sort of unfound, cursed media footage that people shouldn't be watching that, I don't know, just really kind of grabs me and I always just find interesting. Something about that I just find creepy and intriguing, and I can't help but be interested in it. And here you've got this kid show, and even though it is a kid show, it's still pretty creepy. And the characters, the puppets, the costumes that they use for the characters in the Candle Cove show, I think are pretty well done and really help kind of sell that creepy element to it. This season as well also has some really good mystery to it. There's just a lot of questions that you get right from the get-go that you're trying to figure out. You know, what exactly is this kid show? You know, who created it? Why did it all of a sudden come back after 30 years? How is that linked to the murders that occurred 30 years ago? The main monster in Candle Cove is also really cool. Just the design and the look of it is pretty fantastic. It doesn't even officially have a name, at least that I ever heard. I'm just going to call it the Tooth Monster because it's just this monster made entirely out of teeth, which is just really off-putting and disturbing, but really pretty great. So I just love the design there. Very memorable. A large part of the story is told through flashback as the film flashbacks to Mike and Eddie, who's the twin brother, when they were 11. And these are when all the events begin to unfold, when the Candle Cove show first shows up and then the kids start getting killed. Sometimes the acting from some of the kids is a little stiff, is a little unrealistic, but it's a pretty minor complaint overall. This one, like I said, also has some psychological stuff to it and just dealing with some themes of, you know, past trauma, specifically childhood trauma. Kids' wild and crazy imaginations play into the story. Repressed memories play into the story as well. And so just there's all these kind of psychological themes that are just woven into the story, I think, really well. And again, just kind of contribute to a nice sort of mysterious atmosphere that I thought was pretty great. And finally, I have to just mention the final episode. I won't get into any spoilers, but the final episode of Candle Cove I think is pretty great. There are a handful of scenes throughout the entire season, but specifically the majority of the final episode really gave me some pretty strong David Lynch vibes, which is never a bad thing. The final episode is just awesome. It's very surreal and just gets into some really sort of very creative and just bizarre territory, and just kind of the creativity and the imagination of everything that is presented. Man, I really, really liked it. I loved the surreal aspect of it. I thought the final episode of Candle Cove is pretty great. All right, coming in at number 2, and man, this is like a razor thin margin between 1 and 2. I feel like I could probably flip-flop them at any given moment, but for today, right now, at this very moment, my number 2 is Season 2, which is No End House. And this is a story of a college student who is challenged by her friends into entering No End House, an infamous attraction containing 6 different rooms, each more terrifying than the last. And that brief plot synopsis barely scratches the surface, as this is one of the most just creative and unique sort of haunted house stories that I've seen. This thing goes into some wild and unpredictable places, and I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. And I will say that this season has my favorite individual episode in it, and that is episode 1 of season 2. It's just pretty awesome overall. I really, really like episode 1. And just the first 3 minutes alone are just such an effective and great way to kick things off, as we see this terrified woman come running out of this house. And she's running down this street. They're in this neighborhood, and she's running down to the end of the street. And at the end of the street is this pitch black house, totally blacked out. Of course, it's the No End House. Suddenly, as she's running, a stranger appears behind her and starts chasing after her. And right before she gets to the house, he tackles her to the ground, and we see carved into her arm, "This isn't real." And that's our intro to this season. Man, it's just a great way to start this season. One of the main highlights of this season is just simply the No End house itself. Just the look, the design, the way the house is presented, I thought is just fantastic. Each of the 6 rooms that our main characters go through are just they're just different, and they're just very creative and how it's presented, but very just twisted and bizarre. And man, I love the atmosphere in the house. I just thought the creativity with coming up with those 6 rooms, man, I just loved it. I thought it was just very, very well done. Another one of the main highlights in this season are the performances. I think this season has the best acting performances out of all 4 seasons. Namely, the main leads played by Amy Forsyth, Aisha Dee, and then John Carroll Lynch. And Amy Forsyth and Aisha Dee play friends Margot and Jules. And man, their performances in this season I thought were just really, really strong. They play best friends, and just their friendship feels real and authentic. And it's just a very well-established relationship, and their performance and the characters themselves are characters that you root for, that you sympathize with, that you understand, you feel for. And yeah, I just think the acting and the character work here is just it's the best of all 4 seasons. And then John Carroll Lynch is also really, really strong. And he's one of those guys, no matter what he's in, you just know you're going to get something great out of him. And he's really great here. And I don't want to reveal too much about his character, because that's some of the surprises involve his character and everything. But he has a very memorable character. And yeah, it's really good. He's just a joy to watch. He's just awesome. Now, the psychological element with this season really has to do with pain and loss and loneliness, and just past trauma and fear as well. And the No End house ends up exploiting those fears in some very just twisted and messed up ways. The tagline for this season says, "The house that feeds on memories." And yeah, I'll let you try to figure out what exactly that means if you haven't seen this season. But yeah, it goes to just some very twisted and bizarre places. But again, the way it kind of weaves those themes and ideas into the overall story, I thought was just pretty great. And outside of the No End house, I found the sort of general middle-class neighborhood setting. I wrote down in my notes, like, this takes place in Anytown, USA. It's just this sort of general middle-class neighborhood setting, just that has this element of familiarity to it, which I found really creepy. And so I really liked the setting. I just found it to be very effective. So overall, this is just a really strong season, with the characters and the performances being one of the main highlights, as I think they're all just really strong across the board. And just again, the presentation and the design and the look of the No End house is just awesome. And I just love the creativity and the inventiveness of this haunted house type story. It's great stuff. It's my number 2. But coming in at number 1 by very, very thin margin is season 4, and that is Dream Door. And this is my number 1 because I think it is the scariest and most messed up season. And it just has, I think, the most effective horror elements to it overall. And so that's why it's in my number 1 spot. Dream Door tells the story of a newlywed couple who find a mysterious door in the basement of their home. And their home happens to be the childhood home of the husband. And they are down there one day just getting organized, doing some redecorating. And all of a sudden, this door manifest itself out of nowhere. And when that happened, I was getting some barbarian flashbacks here, talking about doors and basements, but this one goes in a completely different direction. But there's something about just that element, just where there is a door where there wouldn't normally be or shouldn't be. It's such a very simple concept, but man, it's something that just immediately grabs my attention, as it just introduces intrigue and mystery to where it's like, I gotta know what's on the other side of that door. And so it's just something simple, but something that I found very effective. And this season has the best monster in it, or creature, whatever you want to call it. And yes, I know the tooth monster in Candle Cove is really great, but I'm going to give the slight edge here to Pretzel Jack. The scene where Pretzel Jack is initially revealed freaked me out. And I think it's the scariest moment in this entire series. And let me tell you, man, Pretzel Jack will live rent-free in my brain for quite a while, as not only is it this just maniacal clown who looks really creepy, but the actor that they got is this guy who does this like contortionist type stuff. So you have this like extremely, bendy, flexible actor who just moves around in these very just unorthodox and bizarre ways that is just very unsettling, but man, just so great. Pretzel Jack, man, Pretzel Jack's awesome. And in addition to that, there's more than meets the eye when it comes to Pretzel Jack. And when you find out what Pretzel Jack exactly is and what it's meant to represent, it just adds a whole kind of layer of depth to it. And I don't want to give any of it away because there's some nice surprises to be had there. But the way they kind of use the character, the creature of Pretzel Jack to serve the story, I thought was pretty awesome. There's also some really solid kills in this season as well. Probably the best kills of the entire series, I think. There's a kill at the end of the first episode that is just very shocking and very well filmed. There is another kill at a psychiatrist's office that is very satisfying and I thoroughly enjoyed. And there's another kill that occurs in front of an entire school bus of kids, because why the heck not? I mean, if you want just some really twisted, dark humor, seeing these kids freak out as they watch this guy get killed is, it's a fun time. I don't know what else to say. And again, there's more psychological elements with this season, as it really has to do with childhood trauma, childhood memories, and what we do with those memories and how we attempt to protect ourselves from some of those painful memories. So I really liked those themes and how they use them within the story. We also get some pretty effective kind of nostalgic vibes and stuff like that, which I really liked, involving like childhood homes and things. And so it's like as the characters are going to their childhood homes and reflecting on childhood memories, it kind of triggers some of my own childhood memories in my own brain. And so you get some of those nostalgia vibes, which I also really enjoyed. And this season also deals a little bit with just marriage and relationships and trust and secrets. And, can you ever really fully, truly know the person that you're with? And it kind of explores some of those things as well, which I also enjoyed. Dream Door also has a pretty effective mystery to it as well. And just, it gives some mysterious elements to the characters as you're wondering, what exactly are characters up to? What's their motivation? What's their angle? Can they be trusted? And so I like having mystery involving characters' motivations and things like that. There's just some good twists and turns. And this thing just, I think, has the most diversity in terms of the horror elements within it. There's some supernatural stuff in here as well. There's just some kind of weird, bizarre stuff as well, which I liked. And so this thing, like I said, it just has a whole lot to offer, just a lot of different horror elements in it. And so, yeah, overall, it is my favorite season. But like I said, all 4 seasons here I think are pretty solid and definitely worth watching. So if you have seen Channel Zero, hit me up down below. Let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know what your favorite season is. I would love to hear from you. If you haven't seen it, it's streaming right now on Shudder. Go watch it. It is pretty great. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you got something out of this, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.